And after the moment of silence, we'll have a pledge of allegiance, okay? So everyone stand. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tonight's roll call is Ms. Roberson couldn't be here. She had another occasion. She had to be at. Is there any additions to the agenda?
Yeah, I'd like to add to the agenda under presentations, the presentation of the CBYA cheer team of a certificate.
Okay, there's a motion to add to the agenda under presentations. We'll move them to first on the presentation docket. Is there a second?
I second the motion.
Okay. Any discussion? Mr. Alger?
Aye.
Mr. I?
Aye.
Mr. Lehman?
Aye.
Mr. Serby?
Aye.
Ms. Schick?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Alger?
Aye.
Mr. I?
Aye.
Mr. Lehman?
Aye.
Mr. Serby?
Aye.
Ms. Schick?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you. Approval of the minutes for January 12th, 2019 work session. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Mr. Alger?
Aye.
Mr. I?
Aye.
Mr. Lehman?
Aye.
Mr. Serby?
Aye.
Ms. Schick?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Council member announcements. Mr. Alger?
I have nothing this time.
Mr. I?
I have nothing at this time.
Mr. Lehman?
I have nothing this time.
Mr. Serby?
Nothing.
Ms. Schick? And the chair's gonna be quiet, we've got a lot to do tonight. Okay, with that, I would like to have Ms. Grigsby come up and give a brief explanation of exactly what all this noise is out in the audience.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having us. The CBYA cheer team has competed this year. This is our third year having competition cheer. Previously, the CBYA cheer program was a sideline-only program that supported the football teams while they played during the fall. When I came on board, I added the competitive nature of it. Our first season, we went to one competition. Last season, we went to two. And then this season, we've gone to three. This was our most successful season by far. And so I'm just going to give you an overview of what awards they won. We competed in our first competition at the Richmond Classic at the Richmond Convention Center, and they won first place in their division, which is the traditional recreation youth, which is 12 years and under. And then they also were awarded grand champions. So there were 3 traditional rec programs at that competition, and we were the highest score of all ages and all levels, at that competition. Then later in December, we went to the Holiday Spectacular, which is held at the Gaylord in National Harbor, Maryland. And we won first place in our division again. And that was out of 5 teams at that competition. We were actually 0.6 away from being awarded grand champion again, and that would have been out of 15 teams. So we came in second out of all of the teams. And then in our last competition, which you'll see up on the screen and we're going to show you, we finished in first place in our division. There were 5 teams in our division. We were the best of level, so all of the level 1 teams, there were 10 teams there in our level. We had the highest score, and then we also were named grand champions for all the traditional recreation teams out of 17 total teams from the DMV area. So we are very proud. The young ladies work extremely hard. They get lots of tough love from myself and the two coaches who work with them. But they really respond well, and they show their character day in and day out, whether it's through cheerleading or at school or out in the community. So this is their performance at their last competition, and then I'd like to recognize each of them by name. You're gonna have to bear with me. Get very excited.
You may begin.
Are you going to introduce them?
I sure can.
When you do, would you have them come up here and stand up here?
Absolutely. Did y'all hear that? So I just want to put it in perspective just for a minute. Most recreation cheer programs don't compete. So all of the other teams in the Northern Neck do not have competitive teams. They just do sideline. And when we compare ourselves to some of the recreation teams that we compete against, the cost for those cheerleaders to do their programs is around $1,000 a year. We actually only charge our cheerleaders $100 for the entire season, and then our families fundraise with the support of our community. So we are extremely grateful to our community for being willing to support us, as well as our families for all the work that they put in. So I'm a crier, so if you didn't know that, I'm a crier. So I'm going to go through the list of names. Some of the ladies couldn't be here, but I'm going to list everyone. So Mackenzie Booker, Olivia Cook, Raina Esmacher, Emma Feltner, Becca Grigsby, Jalen Hamilton, Kaylin Hand, Lily Hicks, Anna Hauk, Evelyn Kincaid, Maisie Marsh, Hannah Mahula, Abby Parks, Mackenzie Phillips, Nicole Rozier, Cheyenne Shelton, Emery Steffi, Cheyenne Suddeth, Caitlin Wenninger, and Maddie Record. And they are coached by Madison Gorfita, Brooke Payne, and I am the CBYA cheer director.
How old are they? What's the age range?
They are 8 to 12.
So, let me ask you guys a couple questions. Girls, it's gender neutral. That's pretty easy stuff out there, isn't it? Did you have to practice to do that?
Yes.
It made me sore just watching it. Well, congratulations. And on behalf of the town of Colonial Beach, we have a certificate of recognition for you folks, and this is presented to the Colonial Beach Youth Athletic Association cheer team for your outstanding achievement during the 2019-2020 competition season. It really is amazing, guys. You guys have set the bar really, really high for some of you who will continue on this and the ones that will come after you. And so we're excited. Again, you made Colonial Beach proud, as so many teams do in Colonial Beach. And again, congratulations. On behalf of the town council and the town of Colonial Beach, we really do thank you for your efforts. And to the parents, I know for parents it's so hard. I know you have to raise money, and hopefully one day we can make things a little easier for everybody as well. We'll get there soon. It's going to take a little bit of time, but thank you so much for your hard work and sharing your kids with this town. And I know the school's proud, and each of you should be very proud of yourselves. Thank you very much. It's great. Thank you. Thank you very much. That was exciting. And I hope they continue to win awards and continue to participate. Probably should have kept them here for a minute. We got a brief history lesson, a proclamation tonight. This is a proclamation for the town of Colonial Beach, which will turn 128 years old on February 25th. And whereas the town of Colonial Beach was incorporated on February 25th, 1892, and whereas the upcoming date of Tuesday, February 25th, 2020, will commemorate the 128th year anniversary of the town's incorporation, and whereas the mayor and the Colonial Beach Town Council hereby make a public proclamation expressing their pride, commitment, and dedication to our town and our founding principles, and commemorating this very distinguished date in our history. Therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and town council urge all citizens of the town of Colonial Beach to take a moment to reflect upon and acknowledge the historical importance of February 25th as a day commemorating and celebrating the incorporation of our town. Thank you very much. Okay. Maggie Lane. Maggie's going to talk about the palm tree donation podium.
Should I just leave it there? Should I just leave it there?
Yeah.
Okay. So, hi council. I just want to take a few minutes to talk about the Palm Tree Sponsor Program that will be occurring for the second year now. So last year the town manager came to me and he had the idea of having citizens be able to say that they were the reason behind the popular palm trees around the beach. And we quickly learned that people love this idea, but they wanted to be formally recognized for their contribution. So that's where we came up with the idea to purchase one big sign instead of individual plaques that would have to be replaced every year. So once I have a list of all the sponsors for this year, I'll create a certificate and it'll go, there's a sheet of plexiglass and it'll go behind that, and it's gonna be placed, I believe, somewhere near the town pier or wherever you guys would like it. And it'll have everybody's name on it or whatever they would like it to say. And it can be switched out for next year and the year after that. So, if you are interested in sponsoring a palm tree, they're $260, and like I said, I can put whatever you want on the certificate. And so far, I have 4 generous donors who have already claimed a tree, and a couple of citizens who've also expressed interest. And I'll be accepting sponsors until the end of May, or until all the trees have been picked. And then this way, I'll be able to get the sign up before our spring season kicks off.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. We ordered 20 instead of 12.
Yeah, 20 trees.
20 trees.
Yeah. So if
We
you're
can get
interested,
more.
you
I think
can
we
email
can
me.
get 30 on a truck.
Yeah, we can get more. Last year we had 12. This year we felt comfortable going out to 20.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much, Maggie.
Thank you.
We'll definitely do that. Yeah, thank you. Dr. Karen Sullivan, River Dogs? Or River Dogs?
River.
River.
The other side of the Rappahannock aren't the only people that call their little stream a river. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to catch you all up on what's happening with River Dogs. I gave Kathy, I think you all have a printout of my report. And we've also, one of the things that we did this year was to take all of the laws that were pertinent to Colonial Beach and Westmoreland County and some safety issues that people should be aware of, and put them in a little brochure. These I just did them myself on my computer, but everywhere I've put them, they have disappeared, so I need to print some more for this season. So they seem to be pretty popular. Since we started in I think it was November of 2016, we have installed 14 pet waste stations throughout the town. That's through the generous donation of sponsors. These stations are maintained by the volunteers. They empty the bins, replace the liners, and they keep the pull bags full. The sponsors and the other fundraising that we do pay for the cover of the refilling of them. And we have several volunteers that help with the installation. I wanted to shout out to Margaret Jones. She has really stepped up with doing pretty much all the stations from Town Hill down to the end of the point that are on public property. She walks her dog every morning, and if anything needs replacing, when she gets home, she gets on her golf cart and she goes around and collects and takes care of everything. There's one individual last year that actually sponsored 2, so I just want to shout out to Barbara Talley, who has sponsored 2 of those stations. And there are a lot of other people in town too that have donated to this. In fact, our kickoff was actually funded by the Colonial Beach Community Foundation, and the first stations went in on that community center property. So they gave us the jump that we needed to get started. We've been trying to get something going on a dog park in town, and last year the town council approved Robin Grove Park as a site location for the park. We were working on that, trying to get that done in time for the submission of a $25,000 grant opportunity with PetSafe. And unfortunately, we didn't get everything done by the deadline. And then last year, they decided not to do the grant. So the announcement just came out. They will call for the grant applications in May. So we want to be ready for it in advance this year. We've got estimates for basic fencing that run from $4,000 to $10,000, depending on how much fencing we put in and which type of fencing we use. We have estimates on a sign which will post the rules for the dog park at $300 to $400. We have estimates on commercial grade dog park agility and other exercise equipment from $3,000 to $12,000. We have a donation of expertise and time for the landscape design and installation by the Colonial Beach Gardeners, with assistance from Linda Jensen, who's a certified Virginia horticulturist and has advanced training in sustainable design, stormwater, and responsible land disturbance. Our design components include an off-leash, large and small fenced area with agility equipment, and then also outside of that fenced area, an on-leash walking trail for those dogs that don't really get along very well with other dogs, where their owners can practice teaching them to walk politely on leash, and on-leash training stations where you can work independently but have a place to hook your dog's leash so that you can work hands-free, and that would be outside of the fenced area. We have plans, activity plans, ongoing, all kinds of great ideas out there, creating a dog club that would have training and competition for things like agility, nose work, parkour, freestyle, and being able to get your dog certified with this Canine Good Citizenship certification. We have a donation of engineering design and blueprints by Owen Peary, he's a PE at RK&K Engineers. We have an on-hand bank balance of $2,825.29. We have additional funding plans, including putting a sign up on the property where we can kind of track our fundraising once we get this grant submitted and kick off the actual fundraising campaign. Some of our ideas include sponsorships by local businesses, and that could be some type of signage on the property. And I'm thinking similar to the way they do the signs on the baseball field down on 205. We are planning a canine Easter egg hunt in April in conjunction with Earth Day events. We would like to have another hot dog and beer event. We had the first one at the Colonial Beach Brewing, and we'd like to actually have one on site at the dog park. We're working with representatives from Colonial Beach Parks and Recreation, Colonial Beach Foundation, Green Space to ensure that we coordinate our plans, fundraising, and activities. Now, the PetSafe grant is a $25,000 grant. It will open in May, and they invite communities across the country to apply for these grants, totaling $225,000 to build or enhance off-leash parks. Awards are given to 13 communities, 8 $25,000 grants to help build new dog parks, and these are the ones that go into communities that don't already have a dog park, so we qualify for this. And then $5,000 awards to enhance existing dog parks. For the submission, we need to prepare in advance a letter from one of our civic leaders showing support for your dog park. It would be great if the mayor or the vice mayor or both could write such a letter. We need photos of the future dog park space, which we have lots of, we've taken. We need blueprints, and Yvonne Perry has volunteered her husband to help with this, and he has agreed. Again, the design calls for fenced areas for large and small dogs, secure entrance with off-leashing area, enrichment for the dogs, water, shade, amenities for the people. And the attached article is actually an interview with a designer who designed one of the top 10 dog parks in the United States. And one of the really interesting things that I noticed about this article, it's in a community of about 9,000 people, and the dog park itself attracts about 50,000 visitors to the town every year because it's such an interesting and unique dog park. We need a summary of how our community would benefit, and we need ways of how our community has already shown support, which I think we have plenty of. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them at this point.
I guess how is our living shoreline thing, I mean, right now the park looks awful, of course, from all the damage of the storms and so forth, and we've been, I guess, holding off on any of the real work to it until we know what the living shoreline thing's gonna do. I would hate to see that work against us, on getting the grant. Do we need to maybe give, as a part of the submission, what our, preliminary plan is for the living shoreline so that they can see the
Oh, I think that would be a great idea. Everything that we've talked about doing has been doing close to the front of the property with lots of access to get back into the shoreline. We don't want to put any fencing anywhere near that shoreline because of the unstable nature of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, unfortunately, it could be hampering your design. I mean, it may do better.
I don't think so.
The other question would be is, we still haven't done anything about the easement on the left-hand side.
That's being done, Jeff.
Are we gonna move that fence over and then go ahead and increase the size of the park? So that would need to be, make sure they realize that fence is not the end of our property.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, only other question I have, I'm sorry if I can finish. The other question was, is what's the timing of the grant? If we submit and if it opens in May and closes at such and such a time, when do they actually award? Because it may work out.
I can only tell you what they did in 2018, and that I think that that opened much later in the year, and the awards were given in time to build the next spring. So hopefully the awards would be given in time to build this fall with this grant. But they haven't announced any of those details yet.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. I think we have a site plan of this property already done by an engineer, so that should get shared with your
That would be
site
awesome.
plan designer, who is, now you say you have an engineering designer, Owen Perry, but then you also say you have
It's
a
the same
horticulturalist,
person.
Linda
Oh,
Jensen,
okay.
and
Yeah, so she would be designing the planting. So she specializes in, when you go there, there's water setting when we have our rainy season. And the idea is that we would plant so that water would be used, so like rain gardens, that sort of thing. And what my vision is that would be done on the outside of the fencing to kind of act as an additional visual barrier around the fencing itself.
I think what I am trying to get at is to encourage that a design come, at least to get approved by the town ahead of this grant. So ahead of the grant application.
So the grant application asks for our ideal idea. It's not mandated that we do exactly what we submit. So you could certainly approve. You'll certainly have a chance to look at the grant application, and if you want to approve it in advance, you can. But it's probably going to have to be, fine-tuned afterwards anyway.
Sure. Quinn?
Okay.
For the grant process, I think it is beneficial if we have an approved site plan. I think it gives the award success rate. You'll have a higher success rate. So if we could get that moving forward.
I also think you can include your dream list in the site plan and not install all of it. So, that's okay, we understand that, but I
Okay.
think we need a diagram at the least of where the fencing's going and how long the fencing is and where the stations go.
Okay.
Even if you don't install them all, even if you don't have fundraising for all of them, just give the big picture And that way, even if you don't get the grant awarded, if we can find some way to help match public funds or, you know, for you locally, if we can help support you in that way, we have already a site plan that we can go off to help support
Right.
that.
I mean, that's
Right.
the basis of the site anyhow.
Right, yeah, we already have that.
Yeah, if I can get a copy of that and work with their, engineers and then bring it back to you
Yeah,
for
I'd like
final approval, that would be great.
See that soon.
I'd like to see a different approach. I'd like to see it done by May, end of May, June. And
With
I don't
what?
wanna wait for a grant, I don't wanna wait for a grant that's not guaranteed. And the people in this town that you see walking their dogs everywhere have asked for a dog park. We've designated a beautiful piece of land to become a dog park. And now we have to wait for a grant. Well, I think that's just waiting too long.
So we need money.
I
How
think-
much money can we get from you guys to do it?
I mean, so, I see a lot of numbers on here. I've been to dog parks. I just got back from Florida. I went to Clearwater, Naples, you name it. Went to dog parks pretty much every day we were there. I spent a lot of time in Northern Virginia, as you know, at dog parks with dogs. And, you can have the Cadillac at dog parks. You can have the Vega or Pinto for some of you young people out there. It's a small car. Dog parks. It doesn't take a whole lot. We can build on as we go along, but right now we need a facility where people can go and meet and greet with their dogs, feel comfortable letting their dogs off the leash to participate in playtime and get socialized. That's one of the biggest problems we have right now is dogs aren't socialized in this town. And that doesn't take much. The fencing, the $10,000 in fencing, I think you're absolutely correct. I think that's about where it's gonna end up. Just the chain link coated fencing, small on the right, large on the left, open in the middle. However we can provide a drinking fountain for the dogs, as you well know, and there's mostly parking there right now. The biggest question I would have is what we do for a base, whether you use mulch or whatever. I mean, I've seen some of them bear mud, and some that are mulched nicely, kind of thing. Standing water is an issue, but at the same time, I don't want to wait till June to find out that we're not going to get this grant and then push this thing farther and farther back. I'd really like to see it get done. I think the people want to see it get done. I think we need to get it done. The park needs to be cleaned up, like Steve was saying, especially the left side of the park has got to be cleaned up. That'll necessitate that to happen more quickly. I believe that there are monies in the town budget, in the very near future town budget, to participate in a small fraction of the cost of this thing. And I think there's enough people in this town who would be willing to pony up to get this thing done, to have it for this spring and summer.
My only caveat to that is that the big grant goes to people that don't already have a dog park. So if we put in a dog park, then we wouldn't be eligible for that grant.
I think at this point.
Yeah.
Well, the other concern I have though is the schedule. If we're talking about the grading that was going to be necessary to do the original living shoreline design we had, it's extensive grading that comes up the hill. It's not right on the edge.
Right.
So, we talked before about having to get all that done before we could install the dog park. The whole idea has been not to put the dog park in only so we got to tear it out and reinstall it after we do the living shoreline. So we need an update on the design of that living shoreline.
Right.
And if it's relatively the same as it was before, it can't go in until the grading is done.
Well, like Karen said, the dog park is so much forward of where the grading is going to be, and based on the
All your equipment's going right through it.
it's going to go straight down. Like the area would be about as wide as this room for any piece of equipment to go straight to the back of the property. The small could be on the right and the large could be on the left, and that would still be the open area. And then you said the walking trails towards the back, but away from the water until we get the grading down, and so the cliffs don't fall in back there. Anyway, we got a long way to go. I get it, but I just, for one, am not. So if I had to bet my life on something like that, I would just start looking for funds to get it done. That's just me.
We are all the time.
I
Well,
get it.
I have a hot button for grants
You know,
and,
I certainly can
I'd
tell
like to
you.
see you continue with the grants, I mean, we can
Yeah.
run parallel paths.
Yeah.
And one other thing I think you need to add into the grant, we all keep overlooking is the number of transient voters that come into town with dogs. Better than 50% of the visiting voters have dogs on them.
True, absolutely.
And that needs to be, and you'll find articles in Chesapeake Bay Magazine about that and everything else, so I think that that's something that should be tossed in to the grant as well and put the
Yeah.
stress on, you know.
We can add that, we can definitely add that language to the grant request as well. Anyway, I know, I understand the predicament that we're both in, and, I just, again, you know, the glass is half full and the glass is half empty.
Can we ask the town manager to pass the diagram of the grading? Rob, I know you guys have it, of the way it was designed before. They said they're gonna use that as a basis, so we know that has distances on it. It has elevations
Got
and
limits of
distance.
disturbance on it.
So can we forward that and the engineered site plan that Howard has done that includes the correct boundaries lines to Mr. Owen Perry and Karen, obviously? And so that he can work something up that meets the needs, and go ahead and design it to, you know, the maximum, most lovely thing you'd like to. And if we can only afford $8,000 of fencing for right now, let's get a fence up, you
Well, there's
know?
also nothing to say that we can't file for the grant, and if you get the grant, maybe we go ahead and pop for the fence, so that you've got a secured area, and that just gives you more money to enhance the park if you win the grant.
And let them know we need
Because it
to.
won't be a park until after your grant's submitted, so it's not like we have one already, right?
I'll plenty of pictures of it with no fencing, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Crossing to just put a 40-foot easement kind of section that will not be in the way by the fencing that the water tank.
Yeah, there's an obvious,
Path.
access path there that where trucks can go around and go in the back gate
Yeah.
of the water and sewer treatment
I would
plant.
keep 40 feet.
Yeah, that, absolutely,
Taking into
yeah.
consideration parking and our side of the
Well, we're not changing the use, we're just
plan.
adding
Well,
minimal infrastructure, so I don't think we have to do a new parking
I just
plan.
didn't know if we were anticipating further parking or what was there or not. That thing's very difficult to park in.
It is, but I think a lot of people take their golf carts,
I
not
agree.
full-size
I
cars,
just didn't know if we needed to anticipate it.
not this time.
The other thing.
I mean, not from my opinion.
The other thing with the parking there is, there's actually more parking area available if you move forward into the park zone to create more parking.
And it's easier to turn in.
Easier to turn
Right
that
now
way,
it's
so
impossible.
as well. And it won't affect the dog park at all. It'll still leave a ton of park space and.
Yeah, that's a real
the park
advantage to
actually-
that site is that there's already parking there
The
and,
park has been cleaned up nicely, I don't know.
oh, it does, it looks
So much
beautiful.
better.
What you all did and what the town did along the front, taking
Yeah.
down the broken fencing and doing a little bit
Yeah.
of grading and seeding of that ditch, it
It
really
really
made a
looks good.
huge difference.
Those trees all trimmed out, look great, and, it's gonna look really, really nice, and it's gonna be a great park, it's a great shaded area for.
And if we, like I said, if we get that shoreline, I mean, if that's a definite, then that is gonna enable us to do actual water access for the
Right.
dogs, and that's gonna make this park and our grant application look really good, I think. So I think we should keep it all in,
I wouldn't mention the water access, because you're not allowed to, it's not like a dune crossing, you're really not, it's not something that you can really get access to the water.
the shoreline restoration does not include access to the
And
water.
it's frowned upon, quite honestly,
Okay,
as part of the permit.
okay,
I would agree with Steve on that.
okay.
We're gonna have concrete lily pads at this. We didn't, you didn't hear that over there, John, you didn't hear that.
Yeah, I didn't know if your restoration was gonna include like a launch place for kayaks or anything like that, but
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And,
thank
you
you.
know, I'm excited to know that, so I really wanna see this get done.
Well, we really appreciate the support of the town. There are a lot of people that, I think are ready, willing, and able to put money in as soon as we have a definitive plan.
Okay.
But right now, it's probably earning more interest in their savings account than it would be in our checking account.
Yeah, I understand it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next, we're fortunate to have some folks from the RAFT, which is the Resilience and Adaptation Feasibility Tool, and it's Angela King. I got one of you, Angela.
Yeah, I'm Angela King. I'm the Assistant Director of the Virginia Coastal Policy Center at William and Mary Law School.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'm Tanya Dankla-Cobb. I'm Director of the UVA, further upstream, UVA Institute for Engagement and Negotiation
Okay.
at the School of Architecture.
Very good.
And we'll tell you that there's actually 3 universities involved with this, also Old Dominion University.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
So we're going to split this presentation.
Sure.
It's very much related to what you're just talking about, living shorelines and resilience. So thank you so much for having us here tonight. We really appreciate it. What I want to do is start up. Okay. We want to start with just sharing what the heck is this thing called the RAFT and what is its goal. This was started back in 2015 in response to discussions with some specific localities in the coastal zone and finding out what is it. A lot of work had already been started around resilience in Virginia's coastal zone, and we pulled people together to find out what is it you need. And what we learned was really quite interesting is that localities really need some help in figuring out what are next steps to increase their resilience and how can we catalyze that. So we put our heads together and looked at different instruments across the country for both resilience and sustainability and came up with some ideas that I'll share with you. So the overall goal, the compass heading that we have for this, is to help Virginia's coastal localities improve resilience to flooding and other coastal storm hazards while remaining, key piece, while remaining economically and socially viable and thriving. And we've also heard that we may need to redo that goal, that some coastal localities where we're working with on the Eastern Shore said it really should say while becoming economically and socially viable. So we're really cognizant that a lot of smaller communities are struggling in the coastal zone, and we're, I hate to say it, we're not the government, but I don't know if we can say we're here to help. But so, next one. So this is quite unusual. I don't know if any of you have worked with academia, but it's pretty rare for academics to collaborate within their own university, let alone across 3 universities. So we are super proud that we have brought these 3 universities together. Each of us brings different types of skills to the table. At the University of Virginia, our institute is part of the planning department, urban and environmental planning. At Coastal Policy Center is part of the law school. Our Legal Eagles also involved in local planning. And at ODU, we have the science piece of our team, as well as some communications piece. Next, yeah. And so what we're doing is we gather data from Louisetta, which is the closest gauge that we have on the Northern Neck for what has been happening, of why is this even necessary. And the reason is pretty simple, is if you see just the number of flooding hours since 1980, this is real time. This is not a projection, which we can also provide, but this is just real time what's actually happened over the last, let's see, how many decades is that? 35, 4 decades, okay. A long time. and that what we're finding is that in the 70s through the 90s is that the sea level rise was being measured at 0.15 inches rising per year, and that the rate of increase has increased since 94. The rate is expected to continue to increase as we move forward. But with this, we're going to show you a couple of projections on the map in just a moment. So just to underline it, I think you've lived this. We probably don't need to tell you that you've had 12 days of flooding in the last year and 600 hours of that. So next slide. So this is sort of the baseline of why we needed it. Okay, and so what is causing this is what we want to say is there's not one single reason, contributing factor. There are many contributing factors. One is not only sea level rising, but that means rising tides. It means that we do have increased precipitation. We can show you those charts, which means we also have more surface runoff, which combines to create rising tides. We also have the phenomenon in the coastal zone of sinking. We are continuing to sink here, and there are several reasons for it. One of the biggest reasons is groundwater extraction. There are other reasons that get really complicated that I won't go into tonight. But and then the last one that I want to point to is when we have a storm, there's storm surge on top of it all, which makes things a lot worse. So here's one of the maps, and I just want to say that you will all have this, so you'll be able to zoom in on it. It's a little bit hard to see from a distance, but what we're showing is sea level, where the at-risk points are with 1.5 feet of sea level rise, 3 feet, and 4.5 feet. And we're showing most of your critical infrastructure is in good shape. Those are the red points as town facilities, it's medical facilities, emergency, such as fire and rescue and police, as well as schools. So they all look like it's in pretty good shape. I think there might be one on the lower western, let me see if I can see.
Probably the rescue squad.
Yeah. So that might be one that you would want to pay attention to, its location. Go to the next slide. So this is just a verbal reiteration of what is at risk and why, is we do have, because of this, we've got inundation, which is flooding. Inundation is also considered like the permanent flooding from sea level rise, shoreline erosion, which you're trying to address with your Living Shoreline project. Wetlands are being destroyed in this process that we're seeing across the coastal zone. We have increasing saltwater intrusion in different places in the coastal zone, and depending on how close you are to the coast, and then of course increased threat of severe storms. All of this is leading to, I'm sure you know, we're speaking to the choir, increased property insurance rates, and what's at risk is transportation and infrastructure as well, and this leads to issues of economic stability that are also at risk. So for us, what did we do? Is we looked at these different instruments of scorecards around resilience and sustainability across the country, and a lot of them were looking at just environmental issues, and we said, that's really not our vision of what a resilient community is we need to be looking at environmental as well as social resilience as well as economic resilience, that all of those together are what enable a community to sustain what we call acute on chronic stresses, and to not only survive. Resilience is really about more than just surviving, and it's about thriving in the face of this. So that's what we'll show you in just a moment, is these 3 elements of resilience. So the raft, we came up with and tested through a pilot process with a town, a city, and a county, so the town of Cape Charles, city of Portsmouth, and the county of Gloucester, a 3-step process that includes a scorecard where we're actually going and trying to find through your different planning documents, where are you on these different metrics that we've set up? And Angela will describe what the metrics are. And so we are actually just finishing up. We're finishing this with the different localities in the Northern Neck, and you're one of the first to be up to talking to and being finished in this scorecard. The next thing that we're scheduling will be bringing the community together at what we're calling a Resilience Action Workshop. And we're going to be bringing all of the localities together. There are 10 currently participating. And so we'll be looking for residents who are interested. We'll be looking for staff as well as elected members, and to come together. And there will be an opportunity for all of these localities to learn, how did everybody do? What are some of the common challenges that we share? And then to break off into smaller groups where you'll be creating your own town resilience action checklist. What is it that you think would be your top priorities? What can we do in 1 year? And that would be what we call your action checklist, and identifying an implementation team that will be helping steward this forward through the year. The third part for us is what we learned from interviewing people, different communities that have worked with scorecards, is that the scorecard alone was not enough to actually catalyze change. Especially in, maybe a city of Virginia Beach has the resources to do that, but most don't. And so what we committed to doing is to saying that our 3 universities are going to be part of this implementation. We'll be working with you and figuring out how can we provide specific assistance given the skill sets that we bring and that students we work with bring, and or how can we connect you with the people who will help you accomplish these. So that's for a year. We'll be working with you. Okay.
All right, thank you. So now I'm going to walk through each of the steps in a little bit more detail. So first with the scorecard, as Tanya mentioned, with assistance from advisory committees and focus groups, we developed this scorecard that identifies these 5 categories. These are framed broadly around environmental, economic, and social factors. And each of these categories has 5 sections. Each section is worth 4 points, so it's a total of 100 points. You do have in front of you this scorecard report. So the first few pages give some more background about the raft, but once you get to page 6 is where you get into the actual scoring metrics. So pages 6 through 27, I believe, are the actual scorecard itself. The first category looks at legislation and policies in place for coastal resilience, what type of coordination and collaboration is taking place between various levels of government, and how accessible and open data is to the public. The second category looks at how well the locality has conducted risk assessments, identified vulnerable populations, and developed plans for disaster preparedness. The third category looks at critical infrastructure such as transportation, water supply, emergency services, those types of things, and how well the locality has identified methods or plans for protecting this infrastructure. The fourth category is land use planning and incentives, and we look at things like the comprehensive plan to see how it's addressing resilience. And then in the fifth category, we're looking at how well the community is engaging residents in planning, supporting and empowering residents to provide leadership in these areas, and also consider social equity, health, and wellness following a storm event. To do the assessment, we utilize law students at William & Mary, and they conduct an independent review of what the locality is currently doing. It's a 2-phase scoring process. The students start out by doing online research, so they will locate town ordinances, town plans, look through the town website, social media, and try to gather all the information that they can. As they're doing this, they're also keeping a running list of questions, either for information they're not able to find or questions they may have. For example, if the comp plan is a few years old, they might have questions about how are these recommendations being implemented? Are there any updates? And the second piece is with that list of questions, we coordinate with locality staff to gather additional information and answer those details. And go to the next slide. So overall, the town scored a total of 54 points laid out here. Within the report that you do have, you might notice that some sections are still highlighted in yellow. Those are areas where if additional information comes forward, the scoring can be updated. So this is still a work in progress, and there's time for the score to increase. You can go to the next page. So what we do with the scorecard assessment then is we try to identify strengths and opportunities for the town. And generally speaking, the strengths are areas where you've scored a 3 or a 4 in those sections, again, out of 4 points. And the opportunities are areas where you've scored a 2 or lower. So these are just some of the top strengths that were identified through the scorecard. The town has established emergency response roles. There's collaboration and communication with the public in that regard. There's a strong regional hazard mitigation plans, support for living shorelines. The comprehensive plan does a good job of discussing coastal resilience, community engagement to inform that, and includes different goals and objectives related to natural resources. And the town also does a good job of providing information through a variety of channels. Next slide. And these are just some of the opportunities that can be pulled from the scorecard. Again, these are based off the specific scoring metrics within the scorecard. Ultimately, the opportunities that get developed at the workshop and put into the Resilience Action Checklist will be determined by the locality and their implementation team. So these are not hard and fast things that have to go on the checklist, just some ideas. You could hold resiliency and training or education events for different types of audiences. You could update the site and subdivision ordinance or the comprehensive plan to incorporate new data. You could explore participation in the community rating system as a way to reduce flood insurance premiums for policyholders in the community. And the town does have a revitalization plan, but it could be made more robust by considering resilience and doing things like developing programs for your small businesses to encourage them to do more emergency preparation. And you could also engage residents, schools, and other groups in emergency drills and exercises, and provide some educational signage at BMPs within the town to provide a way to educate the public about stormwater management.
An example of that would be, I think a rain garden was mentioned, you know, is providing educational information about the rain garden at that site.
Or even with the Living Shoreline effort, there could be a way to work in signage into that as well. So moving on to step 2 of the process with the Resilience Action Workshop. Again, the purpose of this is to bring together various members of the community. Like Tanya said, that could include elected officials, staff, residents, business owners, nonprofits that are active in the community. We also try to invite state agency representatives that are active here, maybe from the Department of Health or Forestry. But really we're open to ideas on who is appropriate to invite to that event. And we provide a space for attendees to develop that Resilience Action Checklist. Again, it's items that could be completed over the course of about a year or so, or significantly started within that year to improve the community's resilience. And these are just some examples of checklist items that have been included on other localities' checklists. You go next one. And then in the third implementation assistance phase, again, we stick with you for about a year, and we hold monthly calls with the implementation team just to check in on how the checklist items are progressing, provide support where we can, and just help to coordinate all the activities. And then depending what types of items are put on the checklist, we can also provide specific assistance. So it might be developing communication products or conducting legal research and policy analysis, drafting language to put into an ordinance or some type of plan, and the other items that are listed here. You can go to the next slide. And these are just some examples of work we did with our Eastern Shore teams. We helped create refrigerator magnets that summarized emergency management information and were distributed out to the different localities. We completed a report on the economic impact of the beach relocation in Chincoteague. Again, developed a communication product to define the difference between evacuation zones and flood zones. And then the image on the right was assistance with green infrastructure mapping. Go to the next slide. This is just the contact information for the different members of the RAFT team. And we would encourage you to visit the RAFT website listed here. These are just some screenshots. It walks through the different communities that we've worked with. Tanya mentioned our pilot project communities. We also worked with communities on the Eastern Shore in previous years, and then we do have information up there about the Northern Neck communities that we're beginning to work with now.
I just I want to add one other thing that is really important for you to know, that this comes at no cost to the community, because this is being funded by the Jesse Ball DuPont Fund. And each area that we go to, we're finding different funding for that area.
And I guess one other thing I would mention with respect to the checklist items and ways we can provide assistance, it doesn't have to be something that's solely on one specific locality. We found oftentimes, especially out on the Eastern Shore, that when one county or town had a need, like the emergency magnets, the other localities also expressed interest. So we were able to coordinate regionally on those efforts, which helped ease the burden and spread it out across more people.
So we're open for questions.
Steve?
In your evaluation of your scorecard, do you take into consideration the municipalities' adherence to the Chesapeake Bay Act, DEQ ordinances, DNR ordinances, and state stormwater management ordinances?
We do. We look through all of those.
Where in that? Is that in the blue? Where specifically would that fall in? I didn't see it really as an item I could identify.
Yeah. We do look at all of those things. Now, one thing about like the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act, because it is required, we don't necessarily give credit for that because it's something that already has to be done.
I understand. My point is adherence. I mean, yeah, we're supposed to do these things.
Right.
You know, is that a part of your evaluation or?
So we don't necessarily go through and look at enforcement or like application reviews. We don't get into that level of detail, but we would give extra points or extra credit if you're going above and beyond those requirements. So there are sections in here that talk about setbacks or buffer areas. So if there were additional buffer requirements set up specific for flood protection, that would be a way to achieve more points.
I have a question. When's the workshop?
April.
It's on April 30th.
30th.
Yeah. We're finalizing a save the date to go out, and it's as of now scheduled to be at the Lancaster County Public Library. Correct?
Yes.
So we're working on the invitation list to send out to folks with the save the date. And at that workshop, again, all of the localities would be invited, the different audiences that we talked about, staff, elected residents, etc. And we would provide a quick summary of everyone's scorecard assessments, an opportunity for the group to talk as a whole, and then break out into small groups so localities can work on their specific checklists, and then reconvene to share what's been developed and also identify some regional needs that we can work on.
One more question. The information that's not in our packet that was presented up here, we have access to that as well?
You have a copy of the presentation, and of course we're happy to share any additional information that we might
Maybe
need.
the first picture of, I'd like to see that as well.
I have it. I can
Use
send
that
it
as
out
reference.
tomorrow morning to everyone.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Just looking through this as our first glance at taking
Right.
a look at it. And then, so when you invite us to the workshop, that would be an opportunity to take kind of, once we've had a chance to digest this information and then go from there about where we can really make these improvements too. You give us elected officials a lot of homework in this, you know, and not just in reading it, but in responsibility about, do your elected officials participate in these things? Do they go to meetings? Are they engaged?
Mm-hmm.
Are they involved? Are they advocating?
Do they know?
Do they know?
know?
Is
Right.
correct?
Right.
So feel like I have a lot more work to do, as always.
Well, just to speak to that, one thing that we found, some of these items, especially in category 1, the localities we've spoken with have said they don't necessarily do it within their locality, but staff has a chance to do those things through PDC participation.
Okay.
So maybe there would be opportunities to expand, I'm speaking for John here, to expand some of the events that the PDC can coordinate. So it's not just reaching staff, but it's also reaching the elected officials.
Yeah, I feel like somehow we are dropping the ball on a lot of this, but we're all volunteers, elected officials, we're not like, this is our full-time job.
I'd like to just reframe that as I think I would hate to say that you're dropping the ball, because I think exactly that the smaller localities, all of them that we've worked with, have this same issue, right? And so what we're here to say is simply become aware that this is an element that will contribute to and can contribute to your resilience. We didn't make these ideas up out of whole cloth, as we pulled them literally from all over the country, things that have been used and identified as helpful for communities that are trying to build their resilience. So it's not a situation of saying, we've been remiss. It's simply a situation of saying, well, this is part of what we need to think about going forward.
I think this council has very much identified stormwater issues and prioritized resiliency in our community. Very strongly. And so I think this is a subject matter that we want to engage in, and you'll see a lot of participation from us in that. But one of the things I don't know if shared with you was that we've done a flyover to try to get data points to start to form some sort of stormwater management plan that makes sense, because we have a old community, and obviously that wasn't incorporated in our original town planning. And so we could use a lot of assistance in GIS. A lot. Perfect.
Yeah.
And I know I went to UVA architecture school, so I wasn't in urban planning in the School of Architecture. But I know that urban planning at UVA does a very good job with GIS, and I don't know if internship programs or connecting us with somebody like that.
Classes, student projects.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we did it on the Eastern Shore.
Put us at the top of the list, please.
Right. And that's really why we want you all in charge of creating that checklist of items, because the opportunities were just ideas taken from the scoring metrics.
Yeah.
But like you're mentioning, this flyover data, those are projects you already have in mind and you've already started working on. So if we can help build the capacity to complete those things, that's what we're hoping
We
to do.
could really use help in that.
Yeah,
So I really look forward to seeing some real positive engagement from this community.
Fantastic.
I don't want to keep you all night, but I could.
No, it's fine. We're here.
Yeah, we really
We're
do.
here to answer questions.
I could. I'm impressed with the score, 54.
Mhm.
We have room for improvement, but that puts us in moderate resilience.
Right.
And the way that says the locality is actively involved in coastal resilient planning and has achieved some successes, which I feel is extremely true. There's still opportunities for strengthening resilience, also true. And resilience action checklist should focus on weak categories and anticipate moderate to difficult improvements.
Mhm.
You couldn't have said it better. And I think we're aware of that, and I think we've been trying to go little steps at a time to get there. We are a very small town with small resources, but we are part of the Northern Neck, and having been through storms here and have a background in emergency management, I can tell you that the mitigation process is ongoing all the time at many different levels, as you're well aware. I see John over here as well. And we got a long way to go, but I tell you, there's no reason why we can't showcase this at some point in time with your help. So I look forward to it. I hope the council does too. I'm sure the community will.
if you were here, I think you were in the beginning, where it says we have our 128th year, we basically dump all of our stormwater into the river. We retain nothing in the town because our system is so old. And there's gonna come a time when the state's gonna mandate that we can't dump any more water out across the streets into the river. And we got a long, we have not even started in retention, not even started.
And I'll just say that in some of the work that I've done with Richmond, is the city of Richmond, as much as it has done, as it is still facing some of those issues as well. So again, to say you're not alone, and that this is something that across the coast, any community that is near water is really trying to grapple with these issues. I want to give a shout out to John.
Yeah.
We could not be doing this without the support from the Planning District Commission, so big shout out to John.
Thank you, John. Okay, well, thank you very much, and again, I look forward to the relationship
Yeah.
that we'll have on.
Us too.
I look forward to April 30th as well. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, and there will be a save the date coming out.
Yes.
So,
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
If you have any
Thank you.
Really
questions
appreciate
For
it.
any of us at any point in time, just reach out to the town manager and staff, and he'll be happy to get a hold of us or us directly, however you do it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we put that on the website, the copy of that? Thank you.
I don't know if anyone's here from the schools, Colonial Beach schools. I heard they may not be, because I think they have something going on up at the gym right now.
They were leading in the basket in the game.
Another playoff game, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And against our main rival, Washington Lee. Yeah.
What's this?
Anybody, I don't know. Anybody?
54 to 46, us after the third.
Okay. Well, I'm not gonna say it's, because you never know.
They win, they go to Lancaster Friday.
I guess, Tim, are you here? Oh, good. You wanna come up?
Sure.
This is our Westmoreland County Supervisor, Tim Trivett.
Mr. Mayor?
Did you hear all that, Tim? What was going on?
No, I just got here actually.
Okay.
I was at a county meeting I thought was gonna last about 20 minutes and it lasted 3 hours. You know,
Okay.
kinda like y'all's meeting sometimes.
Yeah. We'll bring you up to speed on that. Those folks were from UVA,
Oh,
and Old Dominion,
yep,
and about flood mitigation, things of that nature, so.
okay.
and-
So, Mr. Mayor, one of the reasons for the meeting tonight was to hire a company to do the 2022 reassessments. And we agreed to hire Pearson Appraisal Service again, who's done it the last couple times based on their experience. There was 2 other people that did put in an offer to do that, but based on the relationship and the experience, that seemed to be the best choice for that. The discussion that took the longest tonight was about EMS. And that was, unfortunately, as we've talked about already, there's no quick fix to that. But it looks like probably what's going to occur in this budget cycle is the fact that the EMS chief down there made a recommendation that 4 captains be hired. That will be like in a chase vehicle that will go to the scene. There'll be paramedics. And you know, because we already know that with the squads that are in the county, they're almost gone all the time. So they're hoping maybe that will relieve some pressure until they can hire. It would take 8 people to hire to man, you know, a squad. But the consensus is from the majority of the board that they're going to add on to the Oak Grove station out there, and that's where that squad will eventually be housed if they add another squad. Even as much as I disagree with it, that seems to be the consensus of what may happen. But that, I think, is further down the road. So hopefully by maybe June, they'll have those 4 positions hired. It'll be a captain there at Oak Grove, and you know, they'll respond. I was kind of surprised that I did hear tonight in that meeting that you know, because Colonial Beach is about the only volunteer squad that's left. And out of the over 900 calls that they ran last year, they only transported 110 times. So when you're talking about 3,450 calls, that's not very many transports. So, but volunteers, as we've said many times, are, they're hard to come by. And so they are trying to do some incentives to keep people in the county and EMS, but, there was even discussion about the fire service and what's going to happen with that down the road. But we all know it's going to cost a lot of money, no matter what happens. So that's really all I can tell you about tonight, unless you got some questions. One of the best news, I did hear a comment during that meeting that they're looking at raising the county taxes as much as 7 cents for the school, and on real estate and personal property 50 cents. I think that's the area they're looking at, but they assured me, and it's on the record hopefully, that Colonial Beach will not be included in that. So, and shouldn't be.
Right.
So other than that, if they do any of these EMS things, they're going to have to even consider even a higher amount to raise to do that. I think they're talking about around $385,000 for those 4 positions. So.
Question?
Yeah, sure.
Was anybody from the Oak Grove squad at the meeting?
No. There was actually only one individual it was a special call meeting for the purpose of hiring, and I guess then somehow or another this got added for EMS, because I didn't even know about that until, but there was nobody there from any department. There was one gentleman there in the audience that actually was allowed to speak, and he talked about spending 30 minutes doing CPR down in Hay, waiting for a squad to get there. And I don't think that's uncommon. I asked for response times, but really it's kind of irrelevant if they're going to put the squad at Oak Grove. I mean, what's the sense in having the response times? We already know they're at least 15 minutes longer if they're coming here.
I just think that somebody who works at that station would probably have a lot to say on the matter. But I'm
Well,
not
I think we have a lot to say down here too about it, but
Yeah.
it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to get us anywhere. From what I gathered tonight, they're going to add on to that station there, and
I'm going to make a recommendation, for this council to forward to the town manager, and that is because this is an emotional decision, and unfortunately emotional decisions a lot of times are the wrong decisions. And what needs to be done is a small amount of money needs to be done for a study to determine exactly where the best use would be for a medic unit and or a chase captain, period. Nobody in Northern Virginia arbitrarily says, I'm going to put it in this neighborhood because that's where the people with the loudest voices said it's going to go.
right.
They do it based on where its needs are, geography, calls, usage, things of that nature. And then you have your answer. It takes all the emotions out. I want it in Oak Grove, I want it in Colonial Beach, I
Right.
want it in Hague, I want it wherever. And there's 1,000 companies that'll come in here and do that thing. They can do it in 5 days, easily. In fact, they don't even have to come here. They can do it based on map and runs, just like you and I can see with our own eyes. So we need to get those figures, and the county should not hesitate to want to do that as well.
Well, and unfortunately, I asked for some of those figures, and I guess the system they're using is antiquated, and it just
That's their system.
they can't give it to you. And I said, I don't understand that. And these reports, if you transport, all go to the state.
Absolutely.
So somebody ought to be able to provide them. But I mean, it just seemed like that it wasn't something that was
Every time
readily available.
a piece of apparatus goes to that firehouse,
There's a report.
generated.
Absolutely.
And those are all documented, and it pops right up and tells you exactly what they're for and where it went.
Yep.
And same as EMS. In fact, EMS more specifically, especially on transports. Anyway, but I won't belabor this, but we really need to have some folks put together a letter saying this needs to be done by an outside agency to come in and do this,
Yeah.
and not let
Well, and I don't know where that'll go, but it's,
Well,
because I really hope they would listen, but
Yeah.
the argument is that being at Oak Grove is centrally located for the fact that they run the other direction as well to Montrose, and because that squad's out all the time too, so they're kind of closer by being there. And they recognize it's 6 or 7 miles down here, but if they've got to go to Montrose, you're talking 12 or whatever it is, or so. But I think it's gonna be a little while before it actually even happens. I think that the quick thing will be to get, because I think, they've gotta have qualified supervision. They don't have that. They've got all these people in no supervision right now, and I think the state's gonna require them, or already requiring them to do that, to put these things in place so they can be in compliance with that.
The better part of the problem will go away when a emergency facility is built on this end of the county, or in King George on this end of the county. So
Well, and I brought that up as well, and supposedly, and I wasn't aware of all this, but supposedly they came down, spent about $30,000 in engineering fees to put it right out here, just right outside past Saudi's, where that piece of property is on the left, and supposedly nobody here wanted it. So that's what I was. Well, I mean, the people, I guess, who were involved in the decision, whoever that was. So
we met Dr. Farney, myself, and a cohort of supervisors from other jurisdictions and all the area hospital associations, including MedStar from Southern Maryland, met, and that's been 4 years, Dr. Farney, and we did not get a good reply from that. And then later on, about a year and a half later, we got some traction with one of them or two of them, and there is some background right now, some back talk about a facility being built in the Route 301 area. It's going to be an urgent care facility, but they're leaving enough land usage up there that they could do a 24-hour emergency center of some sort. So,
but you're looking at an hour and a half
yeah,
minimum if you transport from here.
yeah.
Montrose looks at probably 30 minutes if they're going to Riverside.
That's half
So
of what it is to Mary Washington. It's a 3-hour
Yeah.
turnaround.
yes, I mean it's
Okay.
a big deal.
Tim,
Yes, sir.
about several years ago, 4 years ago or so, I went with the rescue squad down to and met with Norm and some of the other people in the county about getting some assistance when they wanted to renovate or relocate or what have you to town. And in a nutshell, at that time, it's almost like we're being penalized because we have our own volunteer rescue squad in the town of Colonial Beach, and that we keep getting smacked on the hand, and that nothing will come closer to Oak Grove because we've got our own thing. And until we're willing to give up our volunteer charters, they won't even consider doing anything for the town. Is that the gist you're getting?
Well, I don't want to speculate. I don't want to speculate, but I can just tell you that this is I've been talking this ever since I've been down there about we need to have this unit in Colonial Beach. You sent a letter. I read the letter into the minutes last meeting, and it's almost like though that, and I don't know. I wasn't at that meeting when they were talking. I don't know anything about this property out here. I knew that they had talked about it one time, putting a squad there, and I don't know what happened with all that because I wasn't involved in any of that, but. It's like almost we gave you a chance and it's, you had your chance and it's over. That's the impression I got even during the conversation. And my argument to that is we got to worry about response times. I don't even know that we're meeting the state mandate. What is it, 15 minutes or whatever? I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I'd be willing to bet you that we're not meeting them.
So were you talking about, you were talking about not a hospital being built, but another station EMS station being built out by the propane tanks?
Correct.
Gas?
Just past there was what they had talked about.
That did happen. That did come about. And the previous board of supervisors told us that the rescue squad didn't want to move their stuff there. Our rescue squad.
It was based
Well, now that's
on the decision that they were
Right.
given. They would do this or they don't get in.
They were giving them, the county was going to give them the land, and then the rescue squad was going to use their funding to build the building out, and then they decided not to do it.
Yeah, and that's verbatim what my understanding of was, but and this was the first time I'd heard even mention that fire was involved in that as well, because I've never heard any conversation about where the fire department was,
Only EMS.
that was involved in it at all. But that's exactly what they said. So I think because of that.
And we have no control over that.
But see, they're relying on also, they know that King George and Dalvern will respond to calls here. And they came to 154, I think it was last year, as mutual aid. And they just re-signed the MOU with them, so they're going to You know, they know they've got that as a backup, but that still is 20 minutes or longer
Yeah.
for that kind of response time. So I don't know what the answer is, but I can tell you if you're only transporting 110 times and you run 1,000 calls, that's not the answer either.
Well, I can tell you this.
You know, that's really, and it's sad because, I mean, we know volunteers are you know, and I mean, I brought it up tonight. I said, you know, this is only beginning. Fire's next. Because how many times do you hear, if anybody listens to the radio traffic, I mean, every fire department now is scratching on calls.
Yeah.
Fire calls where there's actually a fire.
Yeah.
You know, there's one down in Montrose like 2 days ago. I think one guy got out in a truck by himself. What's he going to do?
Yeah.
He's responding to an engine alone, which you know, because you know what I'm saying. You can.
Yeah.
The other day up there, that transformer fire, you know, somebody responded understaffed. That means you only got one person on there most likely, or
Yeah.
so it's a crisis. It really is, and it's not going to be resolved overnight. It's going to cost a lot of money. And even if they went out and hired the people, they had 3 options that they gave tonight, and one of them was to hire a full staff, which I think would be 8 people. I think they said 4 paramedics and 4 EMTs to staff that unit. And you're talking about 6 months probably to make all that happen and to do the training or get acclimated, and you know, you got all these things you got to follow. So it's not going to happen overnight, and it is moving forward though, but it's not going to move forward as it's going to be here. I can almost guarantee you that. And unfortunately, I'm only one person.
I still think it's studying.
But we still, it can, you know, you can send that letter. I'll be glad to, you know, take that message. But anyway, I would love to see that changed, you know, and see it down here. But I don't see that happening in the near future anyway. So, anything else?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Planning?
Good evening, I'm Victoria Luna, and this is the first time that I'm speaking to you as the chair, the new chair of the Planning Commission.
Congratulations.
My pleasure, thank you. As many of you know, Maureen McCabe has stepped down as chair, but she'll be remaining in her term till the end of this year, and actively working on the comprehensive plan, as many of you know. I promise that my comments tonight are going to be brief. I just wanted to update you about our last meeting and to let you know that we really focused on 2 items. We've gone round and round and back and forth on the sign ordinance and the landscaping ordinances, but we finally think that we're going to have something for you to consider after our public hearings next month on that. Just a couple of things. Back in 2017, the Planning Commission made recommendations for changes to the signing ordinance that for some reason wasn't adopted. The Commission has reconsidered those items and is now ready to recommend those changes to you, which include eliminating the size restrictions on murals that are non-commercial in nature so that they meet the size requirements for already existing murals. And so that they're in compliance. The other item on signage is that we recommend that yard signs be non-illuminated and be of size restriction, have size restrictions on them. The second main thing that we focused on at our meeting was landscaping ordinances, and we looked at 3 different articles: Article 22 of the Chesapeake Bay Overlay District, the landscaping article for Article 24 for street frontage, and Article 13 relating to parking in relation to landscaping. So my comments really relate to the landscaping aspects of those articles. The first thing that we recommended is that we replace the table of the native species list, which is 2 or 3 pages, with the DCR native plant guide, and that way, as it helps to streamline the process, as that guide is updated, we don't have to go back and make changes to the amendments and hold public hearings again. So that table will be replaced with the guide, subject to your approval, in both Article 22 and 24. Then the second thing that we really spent a lot of time talking about, that is the planting, the tree replacement ratio for dead and dying trees. That's something that we spent a lot of time on, and we recommend adhering to the 2-to-1 ratio for the DCR and the 3-to-1 ratio for the RPA. Looking at the issue of mortality rates in trees and the fact that we have climate variability, and the purpose and the intent of the Chesapeake Bay Act is to preserve the canopy of trees for one that we want to preserve as well. So we're recommending, keeping that. One good thing is that for areas or for lots that are of not sufficient size to accommodate that replacement ratio, it does give the planning director authority to come in and make changes should that be necessary on the rare case that would be needed. And then next we looked at ways to protect clear cutting of lots for new construction, where we're finding that a lot of times builders will come in and they'll just do a clean sweep. And so by including and clarifying the language in that article that will allow trees to be put on the site plan, it will make it clear to builders that these trees are to be preserved, and that way there's good communication on that. We also recommended for the landscaping of street frontage and for the parking lots to allow for crepe myrtles to be planted. And we also encourage the native plant species, but also will allow the crepe myrtles. In addition, we're working on the comprehensive plan. We had the benefit of having the Northern Neck Planning Commission go through the environmental section, and we're going to be updating it for some of the information that you saw today or this evening on that. So we're really glad to have that participation. Once we have completed that, we'll get it printed, we'll review it, we'll hold our hearing, and then we'll recommend it to you in the very near future. And then we finally have a draft of the capital improvement plan, and we hope to have that to you for consideration by the next budget hearing coming up. And lastly, we're holding a public hearing on a special use permit for a major home occupation, and that's going to be at 11 Marshall Avenue. So that's my report. Do you have any questions for me?
Sounds good. You have another meeting right on the 30th?
Yeah, we have a public hearing on the 27th, I believe it is. Yes.
Have you already held your public hearing for those ordinances?
Well, no, we're having, yes.
Okay, so they'll be on our agenda in March. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Downtown Columbia.
Good evening, and thank you for the chance to report. As you know, as I mentioned last month, the money has been raised for our portion of the match for the cost sharing grant for what it needs to be done with the Department of Historic Resources for National Historic District designation. And we wanted to, that fund drive went very quickly. We had a lot of generous donors, and we wanted to present today a token of our appreciation to the woman who did so much to make that happen, and that's Mitzi Sappho. So, wondering if Mitzi could come. We wanted to present these roses to Mitzi for enormous appreciation of the love that she's shown for her community through her efforts to showcase and preserve its history and heritage. And she just Oh, we will remember that. She just said she was happy to help anytime. Mitzi contributes in so many ways. She's been the curator of the museum since 2009. She initiated the Save the Bay cleanup, and she runs the craft brewery that contributes so much to revitalization of a town. So we're very appreciative. That gift also represents our appreciation to the many other groups and community members who contributed so generously and so quickly to that fund drive. And we recognize that we feel an obligation to them and to the community to pursue their vision of preserving the historic character of our downtown. And we realize that the National Historic District status in and of itself is not going to be a silver bullet to do that. That's why we're moving forward on a next step that I had mentioned to you previously about applying for another grant, the Virginia Main Street Affiliate Grant, to create an artistic, well-designed visual representation of how historic restoration and preservation-based development of the public and privately owned properties for sale could attract investors, the type of investors that we want to this town to meet community needs and preferences. Basically, the bottom line is we hope through this grant to come up with a visual representation, or as they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, of what the community wants for its downtown, and attract to the downtown the people who can make that happen. It's a $7,000 grant. We must raise, we've learned, a $3,500 match, and then they would award us $2 for $1 for what we raise. The way it would work would be that we would conduct an initial workshop in which we would compile a list of all the elements that the community has said that they would like to see in their downtown. And we have talked with Councilmember Shedd about her facilitating such a one-day workshop. And the latter part of that workshop would also be identifying common design elements that we want to include in this plan. We are also hoping Rob Murphy, I've been trying to call you Mr. Murphy, would be able to participate to present infrastructure issues that need to be considered if it's going to be anything but a pie in the sky type of plan. When we get this plan, we would be retaining a designer who could do this visual representation, design renderings of buildings, what historic restorations could look like of the historic buildings we have, how they could be, these designs could reflect retail, restaurant, accommodations, housing, and offices that could occur using existing properties or on open lots. The design would then be presented in a brochure form, a marketing brochure, which we hope would inspire and intrigue investors. It would include an economic analysis on how the town's tourist trade, nearby military base, retirees, second home buyers, and expansion of the Nice Bridge could make their investment pay off. And we'd also like to include listings and contact information of our local building and construction trades companies who could assist them in meeting subcontractor and workforce needs. When completed, the brochure would be targeted to Main Street developers and contractors with track records in historic restoration. We have access to both of those lists, and they're substantial. We would be looking to move the project along expeditiously to aid sale of town-owned properties, and especially the historic properties. We do face somewhat of a challenge in having to raise that $3,500 in a relatively short period of time, but we've submitted a grant proposal to the Community Foundation. Mr. Hart is going to be organizing a Facebook fundraising campaign, and we will be sending out a second appeal because there were so many people that never got a chance to contribute to the historic district because the money was raised so quickly. We hope they will consider contributing to this and help to actually realize the vision of preservation-based revitalization and beautification of our downtown. Plans are also moving along on the Osprey Festival. We have a really forceful, outstanding, graphically designed poster that sort of boldly showcases Colonial Beach and its boardwalk in the process of promoting the Osprey Festival. And we've received word from the Riverboat that they are willing to host the Grand Old Osprey concert on Saturday evening if we can line up the music. Our birders have met, and we're committed to putting together a quality program. Altogether, we hope this will encourage visitors to stay over Saturday night, and in fact, make it a weekend. We'll be communicating with local businesses shortly with ideas on how they can help us promote Make It a Weekend during the Osprey Festival. We do have some small concerns about parking issues, which we would like to take up with the town manager at another time. With that, I'd be glad to try and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Do you need a letter of support for the grant that you're writing now?
We may well. We're just plodding through it over the next. Oh, thank you. That would be appreciated, yes.
The deadline is the 15th.
The deadline is the 15th of March. We're writing it right now.
So this is soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, we're writing it now.
I'm sure Maggie has a template for these things by now, maybe.
Thank you.
Just say yes.
Yes. Thank you very much. Susan?
Hello. The Chamber coordinated with Northern Neck Tourism on the Tourism on the Move, a bus tour through the Northern Neck on the 6th of February. We visited the George Washington Birthplace National Monument, Westmoreland State Park, Stratford Hall, Monocan, Rappahannock River National Wildlife Refuge, that was Karen's favorite, Lancaster Historic District, and Lancaster, Virginia Historical Society, and Historic Christchurch. 18 Colonial Beach stakeholders attended the tour, and we're going to look later this year to do a second tour, more of the northern part of the Northern Neck. And I'll be working with Northern Neck Tourism to bring people from the northern part of the Northern Neck this way to tour Colonial Beach as well. And in case you didn't see the paper today, we're on the front cover. Taking a tour of the Northern Neck. We made the front cover. Unfortunately, it gives all the credit to Northern Neck Tourism and doesn't mention Colonial Beach. So I'll have to have a conversation with Richard Burrell about that. I attended a Northern Neck Tourism meeting this morning at the Rappahannock River National Wildlife Refuge in Warsaw. We discussed the implementation of the Northern Neck Strategic Plan, which is 2019 through 2020, and the updates for 2020. And it had stakeholders from the Northern Neck discussing ways that we can enhance tourism in the Northern Neck for this year. The February Chamber Chat went out on February 11th. Nancy Duggan has graciously stepped up to replace Ann Flame as our This Month in History writer. Nancy's a talented writer and artist. We look forward to her contributions starting in the March edition. The Chamber has developed its 2020 Art Walk calendar. Look forward to seeing some new art and new faces, as well as your favorite Colonial Beach artists. We will schedule a call for artists for April for bird art in support of the Osprey Festival. And in June, we'll have a call for artists for beach art. We did that last year and it was a big hit. This past Sunday, Kelly Vaughn of Riverview Inn and Kiki Apple of Monroe Bay Vineyards, along with some other folks, were at the Fredericksburg Bridal Show, showcasing Colonial Beach. They had information that we could be a one-stop shop for brides and bridal parties, with everything from lodging and food and photography, videography, hair and makeup, the whole bit. They reported that it went really, really well. It's a smallish venue, but they gave out lots of information and had a lot of people interested in weddings in Colonial Beach. Big shout out to Joni Millward, Christy Maupin, stars Robin Schick and Eddie Blunt, and Eric Nelson, and videographer Robert Townsend for the production and submission of the HGTV's Hometown Takeover video. It really showcased our small town and our love for Colonial Beach. So big hand for all those people who made that happen. The Chamber's in its final stages of updating our logo. We're finally getting around to that. We've agreed on a design. We're now talking specifics about colors, but look forward soon to a new logo for the Chamber. We'll be having our first member social networking event this week at Julie's. It's a great opportunity, and it's put together for the purpose of our businesses being able to network with each other and hopefully do some package deals for tourists that include lodging, food, activities, etc. Our awards dinner this year is going to be at High Tides. That March event will recognize our volunteers, the Business of the Year, Business Person of the Year, and Officer of the Year. And it's a night that celebrates the contribution of all these people. Mary Ann and I will be working soon on the trolley advertising program with Bay Aging, and we're going to look into a Naming the Trolley initiative where people can put on their thinking caps and come up with a unique name for the Colonial Beach trolley. I won't be able to be here next month. I'm going to visit my daughter in Germany, and I'm spending a month there, so I will miss you all, kind of. And as always, we thank you for your support. Any questions?
Thank you very much.
Good evening. Hope you all are well. The foundation has been going through some internal machinations to update some of our procedures and policies and our financial recording and so forth. So some of what we've been doing, I'm not going to actually share very many details with you because it's kind of boring, but we have been working hard on all of that. We did do our chocolate and wine, our annual chocolate and wine pairing this past Friday for Valentine's Day. And yours truly was the MC of it because, as you all know, I guess, that I used to do chocolate and wine pairings all the time in my past lifetime. Anyway, that went very well. It was a good fundraiser for the foundation. We've also been getting a lot of publicity lately. The foundation has. We were in the Freelance Star, a really nice article about the change in leadership at the foundation, and really appreciated all the good work that was done on that. Also, I went down and was interviewed on Channel 13 in Norfolk. Yes, Norfolk. It was actually a promotion for the wine and chocolate event, but was a good way to highlight and spotlight the town and the foundation.
As Susan said, the HGTV event, or the HGTV video application went very well. Hopefully you guys saw the video. It was spread all throughout Facebook, and so hopefully you guys have got a chance to see it. I also appreciate all the work that was done by all the people who were involved and the stars of the video sitting up there and others. And I was going to ask Christy, do we know anything about the timing of the decision? I keep getting asked that question, and I don't really know, and apparently it wasn't in the application when we would hear. So, of course, as soon as we hear something, we will let everybody know.
All we know is it's going to air next year, so however long it takes to do 6 episodes between now and then.
I saw there was 22,000 views.
Pardon me?
22,000 views of that video.
Oh, really? Wow. That's many times the size of this town.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
I was responsible for 19.
That's great. That's great. The next fundraiser we have coming up is on April 18th. It's a wine and design, so it's actually I think we're getting an image of a photograph taken by Bobby Hooker that will be painted by the artists who want to participate. So that's on April 18th. And also I want to mention that Dr. Farney is going to be talking a little bit later during the citizen input about the project that he's been working on related to planting of trees on the boardwalk. So that's all I have to say about the foundation. I want to just talk for just a second about I'm going to put my Artist Guild hat on and say that the project that we were undertaking to possibly buy the Beachgate and turn it into artist studios it's not really working out. I had heard from a bunch of artists that that was not the best space for that, so I don't think we're going to be pursuing that. But, big underscore but, we are going to be looking at the Repo place. What I guess some of you maybe remember, it was a lumber yard many years ago on Colonial Avenue across the street from the Beachgate. I was approached by Bob Christensen on behalf of the Colonial Beach Performing Arts Group to look at it for the potential of a community theater there. And so a few of us went there last Friday and saw it, and it's unbelievable space. It's super cool. It can be used for so many different things. So a few more of us are going to be looking at it on Friday. So it could be a place where we could have a theater, artists, and more. So the town might be interested in looking at it for space for its offices. And
what time will you get?
Pardon me? What time? 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock on Friday. So, I'm sorry it didn't work out with the Beachgate. That seemed like a good potential for me, but I understand there's somebody who's already brought in an application to use that building for a motel, which, I don't know, maybe you'll hear about later. So that's all I have for both the foundation and the Artist Guild. If there's any questions. All right, thank you
very much, Eric. Appreciate it. Colonial Beach Recreation Association. You have anything to say, Pat?
I think Susan has it.
Oh, Susan, you have it. I'm sorry.
Karen sent me this.
Okay.
She said that the excitement of having a true recreation and parks entity in Colonial Beach has gained a great deal of positive momentum and sparked all kinds of dialogue. They are planning a fundraiser for early April. In March, the Colonial Beach Recreation Association will be supporting the Traveling Yogi in a Saturday class series held at the Colonial Beach Community Center. They are in the process of collaborating with Colonial Beach Green Space and other NGO groups to plan a series of Earth Day projects in April. Soon the sponsored Drifter Spring Sports schedule posters will be available, and She's looking forward to warmer weather and lots of outside time. Thanks for your continued support.
Thank you. Karen, thank you. Steve Kennedy, Green Space.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right now, like she just said, on the Earth Day, we are planning an event, a trash pickup day. I talked to Ms. Schick about it. We're going to concentrate up by the school and around the school area, all the way out through Classic Shores. And the reason being, that's where a lot of our kids walk to school. And we thought we'd get that and hit it hard and see what we can do. We're going to divide it into trash and recyclables. Hopefully here next month we'll have a PSA on the radio station to ask for volunteers. We got pretty much all of it put together. I met with Mr. Turner today for the permission to use the school property, which he was very open to. And that's pretty much what we've been really busy with. I heard Karen talking about parks, and real quickly, and I won't bore you to death, but I thought about it, and you know, we got a lot of great parks here in this town, if you don't know about it, or if you do. Washington Park, Troy Park now, we got the community center property down there, which I consider a park. We got Castlewood Park, Robin Grove, and whether you call it a park or not, Eleanor Trailer Park. And I think they all beautiful, beautiful green spaces. And they could be utilized better, I think. And we could do a lot of different things with it. As you and I talked to you about this just recently, some of the places I've gone to, they have playground equipment. But one thing they don't have, a lot of other places do have, is adult equipment. Things that people can use for exercising. We have a lot of walkers in this town. We have a lot of joggers. We have a lot of cyclists. Golf carts. Older people that don't go to a gym and could use some exercise. These things are readily available. Excuse me, I got my tongue tied around my eye tooth. Couldn't see what I was saying. They're out there, and it would really enhance what we already have. You know, it'd be a great, great accomplishment to get some of these put in. It'd be a big draw. And along that same line, I think I heard some time ago about moving the playground equipment from Castlewood Park around to Eleanor Park. I want to make sure that that doesn't get dropped by the wayside. If it is, time is getting near to the season starting. If you want to increase your parking down at the boat ramp, now's the time to do it. And I think it would be a great place to set it around Eleanor Park. It's clear, it's nice, it's private. It's great for the kids. The more the traffic you have down at Castlewood Park, there's a greater risk of somebody getting hurt down there. So it's advantageous for not only the town, but I think our citizens to maybe get that thing accomplished. So I'm asking your support in that. Any questions?
I think that's great. I still support that idea 1,000%.
Okay, that's two of us. Let's get it done.
Yeah, and so,
okay?
I think
that's three of
we've
us.
already, everybody here has already said that they thought they had a good set of legs under it. What we could do is ask the manager to have Public Works come up with a price and figure out what it costs to move the equipment up there, and then to make that property into more parking space down there where we need it, so that we don't have people parking in the diagonal, triangle, whatever you want to call that. I was thinking diagonal road. I don't know why I was thinking diagonal road.
Talking about Castlewood.
Yeah.
And we certainly would love to work with you on doing that and getting that accomplished along with Mr. I and the Parks and Recreation.
So we can make that happen. I think we've encouraged parking right now. We've done very well with the revenue generated from it as well. So
okay, thanks a lot. Appreciate your time.
Yep. New business. I can turn to tab B. We have a draft ordinance that we will look at the meeting in March. And I think we've already been over this. We talked about it at the work session. This is the language. I believe, is that correct? This will help us put teeth in the, we talked about, okay, let me back up a little bit, sorry. Don't mean to be so scattered. At the work session, we discussed what can we do to ensure that our parks are utilized in the way they were intended. That includes Torrey Smith Park, which has started to have a couple little unsettling issues occur with the people there after dark, which is not permitted. Bicycles on the tennis courts, bicycles on the basketball courts, again, not permitted. We now have new signage up, but what we didn't have was an ordinance where the police could actually go and enforce. So this would give us the language to be able to enforce those laws, albeit we probably would never have to arrest anyone, but we would at least we couldn't have somebody, one of our wonderful young adults or even an older adult turn and say, well, there's no law. Well, there is a law, and there's going to be a law. It'll be a class 4 misdemeanor, which is not a whole lot, but it's enough to know that you can get a fine or whatever. Also, there was talk in the original plan, most of you remember, that we would have cameras on the building and still on the property. That's still going to occur at some point in time, although they are very expensive. We did have a company come up and look at them, which we've talked about at other meetings. But in the meantime, going into the spring and summer where we expect a lot of usage of the properties, we want to identify it so that everybody's clear on what the use is for, when it's to be used, and things of that nature. And, hopefully we won't have a problem. When we were doing the video, Robin and I were there, and we had 4 trash cans, and we were standing in the middle of them, and there was 3 or 4 McDonald's bags and cups laying on the ground with 4 trash cans, literally within 6 feet of the trash. Anyway, so I mean, I know that's going to happen. You see people toss it out the window in front of you and everything else. I get it. But again, signage keeps honest people honest. We'll have, again, the police will be able to patrol there and say, hey, park's closed. We now know that all parks are closed at dusk. That's very clear now, so there'll be signage. That's what this is about. And I guess we will bring this to a vote in the March meeting. That's the March regular meeting, or are we gonna, does it matter?
Yeah, we'll have to have a
Public hearing?
Public hearing.
Yeah, okay, so when is that, do we have it set up for a public hearing?
Regular session in March.
Okay, sounds good, all right. So that's when we'll look for that. Okay, so next is, tab C, which is, town manager to proceed with the sale of property. Everybody on the council is extremely familiar with this. We've been over this multiple times. I believe we're going to go into closed session and discuss this a little more at length. Is that correct, or you don't need to?
This piece just requires council's authorization for me to
You had a
proceed.
public hearing, I think, your last meeting.
Yeah.
Yes.
You voted to sell the
Yeah.
property.
Correct.
Unanimous vote.
Yes.
So this is just approving the sale of the property.
Okay, good enough.
Just
I'm
for this
sorry.
building.
Okay. That's right, we have another reason. Thank you. Good. Good news for everybody. Okay, so this is resolution 10-20, authorizes the town manager to proceed with the sale of the property, which we know is the Robin Grove track back there. We've been through this, we've sat in closed session, discussed it as well. Is there a motion to accept the resolution? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion. Okay, with that, we'll go. Mr. Alger?
Aye.
Mr. I?
Aye.
Mr. Lehman?
Aye.
Mr. Serby?
Aye.
Ms. Schick?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you to the manager and staff and to Joe and his wife for purchasing the property and doing what they've done to really make the area so nice.
Because this is sale of property, it goes 5%, 5%, 10%.
Correct. Yeah,
Just
so
wanted to
this,
make sure it
this
goes
is gonna
into a
help lot
capital
of folks.
improvement.
Yep. Okay. Very good. Okay, Pete, citizen input?
Peter Farney, 3419 Riverview Drive. I want to say right away that I'm not speaking for any organization which I may be affiliated with and where I may be recognized for. I am aware of the Columbia Beach Foundation Shade Tree Initiative, and I'll speak to that a little bit later informally. What I'm going to say is, had we continued the NGO Government Collaboration Council, I probably wouldn't be standing here. Because I heard today that Maggie was going to speak about palm trees. And I have to tell you, I'm very emotional about palm trees. I'm vehemently against palm trees in Colonial Beach. I don't see any need for them. This is not a palm tree climate. I would be offended, except that now I learn, and I could have learned earlier, that this is a voluntary effort by people supporting, private individuals supporting the palm trees. This is in contradistinction from what I heard today, that the town had authorized the purchase of 29 palm trees. Again, as a tax-paying citizen, I think this is really poor use of our money. This is not a palm tree climate. Palm trees last a year or two at best. We have a very mild winter this year, so they'll probably last a little bit longer. Had that money that was authorized for palm trees, excuse me, been applied to the Tourism Council, perhaps that would have been a better use for our money. In fact, does the support of the Tourism Council, is that less important than planting an ornamental palm tree for one season? Obviously, I'm very personally involved with this particular thing. I think it's a terrible waste of money, an unconscionable waste of money. Let me talk now about my knowledge about the shade tree initiative, because I guess I'm the one that has pushed that. In the past, and Eddie certainly remembers it, we had shade trees. They were willow trees at the time, all along the boardwalk. And Hurricane Harvey took most of those away, and a subsequent hurricane ruined them too. We have 4 shade trees now. You've seen them at the south end of the boardwalk. They're largely in front of the High Tides restaurant. I estimate them to be 15 or 20 years old. They have endured 3 or 4 hurricanes. Last summer I took notice and took pictures that I unfortunately, with your indulgence, I'd like to continue another minute or two. I was down at the beach and I took some pictures. And I took pictures first of the people around the palm tree that's there on the beach. And there were none. There are tents around the palm trees which give shade. I turned 180 degrees and took pictures of people under the shade trees in front of the High Tides. There were hundreds of people under the shade trees. In fact, those heavy benches on that terrible concrete slab, picnic tables and benches, were carried underneath the palm trees, underneath the shade trees. I think that it is a worthwhile endeavor, and the foundation supports me on that, to continue the shade trees along the boardwalk. We've had shade trees in the past. They're very popular, they're very durable, and I think that's the direction we should go. So I'm sorry I didn't bring the pictures, because the pictures are worth a whole lot more than what I just presented. And again, I'm not speaking for the foundation about the palm trees. That's my own personal thing. I just think it's a terrible waste of my money to have palm trees there. Thank you very much for your attention.
Walter?
Well, first of all, the Colonial Beach basketball team won at at WNL at the home court, and they won by a fairly good margin, and they are on Facebook. We are be facing Lancaster at Lancaster, but we are number one in the regionals because of the schedule that the boys play in basketball. Lancaster is rated number 3 in the regionals. We are number 1 in the regionals. And that's where I went to watch the basketball game tonight. Secondly, I want to thank the Public Works for doing a phenomenal job on cleaning up the North Beach. As well as, because everybody knows, I travel on my golf cart very heavily, and I was going to ask the Public Works Director if he could put some 41A gravel coming off of Forest Avenue, coming off of the golf cart path, and he already did it. And I want to thank him for, doing that. The third thing, back in the 60s and 70s, we had a ski club in town, and they would put on ski shows during the summer months, and hundreds of people would line Monroe Bay, and 3 skiers skied from Colonial Beach to DC, and they skied up to the Memorial Bridge. And so,
Don't sign me up for that one.
and actually, when I was in my younger years, I was a pretty good skier as well. My cousins as well. And so the other thing, a person that swam the English Channel back in the mid-50s, he swam in his training, swam from Cobb Island to Colonial Beach. It took him 8 hours. English Channel is 22 miles wide. So, on a clear day, you can see the coast of France on a good clear day. And he was the last person to swim the English Channel. So that's my history lesson for. And the other thing, when you ride down into the yacht club, you will see on the right-hand side a small cinder block structure. That was the beginning where they were going to put a ski club building. That never was done, and that's still there today. That was my history lesson for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a motion to go into close meeting.
Mr. Mayor, my understanding is, council would want to go into closed session pursuant to Virginia Code 2.23711A3 relating to the acquisition or disposition of publicly held real property, where discussion in open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body, and pursuant to Virginia Code 2.23711A7 for consultation with legal counsel pertaining to probable litigation, where such consultation or open meeting would adversely affect the litigating portion of the public body, pursuant to Virginia Code 2.23711A8 for consultation with legal counsel pertaining to specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice of counsel. I would want to talk to council about issues relating to Westmoreland County, as well as issues relating to collection of town debts, and also pursuant to Virginia Code 2.23711A1, discussion and consideration of specific public employees.
Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.